Hey guys, Woods Farm here, Project 222. This is episode 25. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to change it up, and I'm going to do a recap episode. There's a lot of new people to the channel, a lot of people just finding out about the project. So I'm going to go back and go over all the progress and the different things that we've done on the project over the last couple of years. Okay, first thing I want to start with is just clear up some stuff. The goals of this project. Mainly, obviously, we want to build a replica, a full-size replica of the Sdkfz.222 Armoured Scout Car. That said, we're just aiming for a reasonable facsimile. The reason for that is really two things. We want to make this vehicle and get it operational as fast as possible, and B, we're working on a budget. Okay, so we started with a partially completed frame and skeleton that we purchased down in the US. Some guys down there had started a 222 project, and for whatever reason they abandoned it. We seen the ad, went down to Maryland to check it out, and it seemed like a pretty good deal. I had some kind of minor issues at the time, but we felt like it was a good value based on the fact that we were getting an engine, transmission, a frame, axles, all that kind of stuff. So we grabbed it, brought it home, and then the project sat for a couple years. At that time, I was still working on finishing the Kuba wagon, so we couldn't go right to the project immediately. After the Kuba wagon was finished, we pulled it out of storage and started tinkering on it. And right away we noticed that there was an issue with the overall height. We hadn't really picked up on that when we bought it, but once we started working on it, we could see that it was definitely too tall, and there were some other minor dimensional issues. So we took a closer look at it, and ended up being the fact that the frame was too wide. The frame rails were much wider than the original vehicle, and although we were told that they had used measurements from a museum example, I think the fact that the frame was too wide threw everything off, and it really changed those angles and caused the overall height of the vehicle to be at least 12 inches too high. So the first bit of work we did is we actually tore down the skeleton that was there, and we started from scratch, building our own skeleton. I had a couple of ideas of how to narrow it at the base so we could get that side angle to be at least closer to the original, and then we also tweaked a few of the dimensions just to bring the overall height down. The goal here was to improve those side angles and get the overall height of the vehicle down, and I think we accomplished that. So the first winter that we really started working on the vehicle, the goal that year was to get the drivetrain working. Basically, we needed a chassis that could drive, turn, and stop before we went any further. The vehicle came with an Ep.25 transfer case, and I did experiment with some other ideas. The main issue being the engine was mounted quite high up to clear the differential, and that caused the main drive shaft angle to be pretty steep. I reached out to a drive shaft shop, and they confirmed that the angle we had was acceptable for the type of use that the vehicle was going to have. So we went ahead, mounted the transfer case in the center of the vehicle, and went ahead to fabricating custom drive shafts. I did have to remove the rear axle and change the pinion angle, but once that was done, we got everything hooked up, and we were able to test the vehicle, and we had forward gears driving forward and reverse gears going back, so that was good. There was some concerns with the rear engine setup, but everything worked as it was supposed to. The next thing was to get a steering system installed. The Scout Car has a really unique angle of the steering wheel for clearance issues, and we wanted to replicate that the best we could. So I ended up using an ATV gearbox for an ATV driveline to get that steering wheel orientation. It's not perfect, but it gives you the right feel. And then it was just as simple as installing a steering shaft to the original steering box on the truck frame, and we had steering. I looked at steering wheels. To get something that looks like the original, we were looking at antiques. They were kind of expensive. So in the end, I made our own custom steering wheel using a basketball hoop as the base, and it works pretty good. Next part of the project was brakes, and this really involved coming up with a master cylinder that would work for our vehicle. We experimented with just a plain master cylinder, but found it didn't have enough stopping power, so we had to go back to the drawing board. And the issue was trying to get the brake pedal in the right location, and obviously there was clearance issues. Brake boosters are quite large, and we were worried we wouldn't have enough room for it. I played around with different ideas about mounting it under the floors, but the front axle was kind of in the way. I played around with having a remote brake booster, but that was a little too expensive. So in the end, we just mounted the brake booster master cylinder in the nose of the vehicle as far forward as possible. Ultimately, I would have liked it if the brake pedal was 6 or 8 inches further forward, but we had to settle on this. It was the most cost-effective and easiest solution, and we just hooked up the brake lines and we had brakes. There was some other minor mechanical stuff we had to deal with. We changed out the radiator. We had to move the location of the alternator, and we had to set up a system to shift the gears. So that was all custom fabricated. But once that was all done, we were able to get in a couple successful test drives, and the vehicle was drivable. At least the chassis was drivable. We could drive, turn, stop like we needed to. So that completed that part of the project. So the next thing was to start working on the body of the vehicle. We fabricated a cardboard mock-up, and then we started working on the floors. We had to put in some structural support for the floor, and then we patterned it out and installed checkered plate floors, which turned out really good. Pretty happy with the end result on the floors. And then we started working on the body panels. Now, we did come up against a few minor issues with our skeleton, mainly stemming from square issues, squareness, but we were able to solve those problems with a little bit of monkeying around here or there. There was also some issues with the angles and the symmetry on the nose and the hood. Got things back on track and started mounting body panels, starting at the front and working our way back. So moving along, at one point we stopped and did a mock-up of the fender just so we could get a kind of look of how the front end was going to turn out. We know that there's some issues with the angles and the dimensions. That all goes right back to the width of the frame, but overall we're happy with the way it looks. It's not perfect, but we're moving forward. A lot of fabricating at this point, just working with the plate. We're using, for the majority of it, it's 1/8 and 1/4 inch thickness, depending on what materials are available and the location of the plates, the size of the plates, various factors. But now we're getting pretty close to being caught up. You can see that we've got the whole front done. as we head towards the back of the vehicle. We've almost got the crew compartment completely enclosed. And the next thing we're going to be working on is that engine deck. And at that point, we're going to be looking at doors, hatches, that kind of stuff. That's what's going to be next for us with this project. Okay guys, hopefully that was interesting, going back and taking a look at where we started with this project, especially for those of you who are new to the channel and are just checking us out now. You can kind of see the progress that we've made and how far we've come with this. We're going to be working on the Scout Car throughout the winter, right up into the spring, so we should be posting videos weekly. I'm going to try to post videos every Thursday on the Scout Car as we continue to work on the vehicle. If you're new to the channel and this is the kind of stuff you're interested in, definitely think about liking and subscribing. That way you can see the weekly videos as they're released. Also, if you're new, make sure you go back and check out all of the previous videos on the Scout Car build. I'm going to post a link right up here to the very first video that we made. Go back, check that out, and then just follow the series along right through until you get caught up. Really appreciate you guys' support so far on the project. It's been great to see all the feedback. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.